Welcome back. Week 2, bonus video 1. I'm going to continue my chat about the killer tools. Now you've been introduced to, and we'll continue to work with these in a more advanced way later on, the adjustment brush and the gradient tool. I'm going to continue with the radial tool. Let's take a peek at what it does. Now, we've discussed that there is a magic trick that photographers in the darkroom would often do where they would darken the edges and the corners. And I showed you a way to do that with the brush. I grabbed my brush. I grabbed a particular brush size. Of course, I'm hitting brackets to change my size. I looked down at my sliders, as you'll recall. I reset my sliders with a keyboard shortcut. On the Mac, I did Fat Finger R, which was Command Option R. On the PC, it was Control Alt R. When I did that, it reset my sliders. Now I know what I want to do. I want to darken a little bit. So I'm dialing down the exposure around the edges and the corners. Why? We learned because it draws attention to the subject. Human eye is more drawn to the bright spots on a darker field. And so those corners and edges tend to distract from my subject. That's one way. I'm going to hit the letter P for preview, before and after. So you're going to see me do P. Now we could do this with studio lighting, and they often do shoot a little light, little glowy spotlight behind the subject. It achieves the same purpose. It's another way to do it. All right. I'm going to undo what I did. I did it with the brush. That darkening of edges and corners actually has an advanced name. It sounds very foreign and exotic. It's the vignette. You're adding a vignette. You see how it's spelled? There's another way to do a vignette. I did a vignette, darken edges and corners. I did it with a brush. Now I just did Command 1. It took me back to my main panel, left my brush. We learned that last lesson. All right, I'm looking at my basic panel. Now I'm going to close it. I'm going to collapse the basic panel by twisting the arrow, just so you can see more clearly where I'm heading. Command 1 I just hit on the Mac, Control 1 on the PC. Command 1 for the basic panel, Command 2, Command 3, Command 4, Command 5. I'm heading to Command 6. Command Station 6. Command 6 took me to Optics. And under Optics, I see a very specific vignette tool. Let's vignette. I could go, and I don't want to the right, and it's going to increase the brightness in the edges and the corners. But if I drag to the left, it's darkening my edges and my corners. And you can see, if I can, by the way, I could be finished with that, but you can see that if I come down, there's a little section here called the midpoint. And the midpoint is only active when the vignette is set to something other than 0. And the midpoint says, hey, in your giant fade from do something to don't do something, how do you want me, where do you want me to do the half and half of bright to darkness? 50% halfway, but you can drag that around and you'll see that you can push and get a new look on the vignette if you want. Now, when I do this, I want you to notice, and I'm just doing this for emphasis, that when I hit P, it didn't just vignette my edges and corners. What it's doing when you use the vignette tool, right? The vignette tool is actually coming in and protecting the dead center of your image. The center of the image. is what vignette is doing. And therefore her hair got a little darker. Her eyes and forehead, in fact, got a little darker. This is my problem with the vignette slider. Now I'm going to go back and reset those. The problem with me painting, which I adore with the adjustment brush, is that I have to paint. The problem I have with the vignetting is that it protects the center, and unless I'm shooting my subjects in the very center of my images, that's bad composition, then it doesn't really do my job well. And so I'm going to introduce you to a new killer tool. And the new killer tool is the radial filter. It has a keyboard shortcut like so many others that make no sense. It's just the letter J. I just hit J. Oh my goodness, what happened there? A woman from Mars. I'm going to hit the letter J, and I am now in my radial gradient tool. The radial gradient tool. It is also one of our local masks, right? It's a here or there tool. All right, watch me as I continue to work. You're going to see I'm going to hit manually, fat finger R, or Command Option R, Control Alt R. I'm going to keep reviewing. And I've reset all my sliders. What do I want? Well, I want to darken the edges in the corner, so I'm going to dial it down. Here's the magic about the radial filter tool. You center it where you want to center it. Now, there's a problem you're going to see immediately. Here we go. Let's do it. Center it. Yeah, no. Get your pencil. The problem is that when I did undo. The problem is that when you use the radial tool, it thinks you want to perform the slider request inside that shape. So with your pencil in hand, you're going to write down a new magic trick. I've been dying to show you this. We're going to use it like mad for the rest of the course. And it's simply the letter X. Wow, is this powerful? X. X. Pretend that X means exchange the inside area for the outside area. X is just exchange. Don't do it here. Exchange it for the there. And X goes back and forth. So it's a toggle. It's a switch. And you can perform X either before you use the tool or after you've used the tool. So here I am. I've got the tool selected, but before I even begin the drag, you're going to see me hit X. I don't see anything visually that happened until I use the tool. And now it looks like it's brightening the inside. It's not, it's darkening the outside. So you see what I'm doing is I'm vignetting with my subject centered within the vignette. That's why this is a killer tool. Well, the problem, Rick, is it's a big, and by the way, see, I can change the shape. It's a big oval. And when I release it, if I don't see the edges, new keyboard shortcut. V. Again, it makes no sense. They call it the overlay. The overlay. Show me where my tool began and ended and give me the little tool editing panels. Editing anchors, right? Overlay. Now, it's not O. O already has a job, so it's V. It's the next letter in overlay. It's overlay. V. Also a toggle. Show the overlay of the tool or not. And depending upon how I last toggled, when I use the tool, I may see the overlay. But I just want to kind of see what it looks like without the blue dot in the middle of her nose. So I'm hitting V. All right, but with the blue dot showing, that is a dragging point. I can click on that and drag it, and you see how it's changing the center of the vignette. It's like shining a flashlight on my subject. You can see if I had centered it like the Command 6 optics panel vignette tool would have, that her neck would have been the center. But I'm moving it up, and I can move it anywhere I choose. I'm going to hit V, hide the overlay. I'm going to hit P, preview. Oh yeah, that's much better. I'm going to save a snapshot, Command Shift S, or Control Shift S on the PC. I'm going to call this number, I don't know, 10. That's my 10th iteration, let's just say. Or I could give it a better name, right? Darken edges and corners. There it is. I'm good to go. She's the center of my bright spot. That's the radial filter. I'm going to go back and hover on my masks panel. Get ready. In my masks, I can see my stencil. And when I just move my cursor over it, it's showing me now with a really bizarre color. Yours is probably set to white. It's showing me with a bizarre color the area of affectation, the area I've affected. Now if I look down, there's a checkbox in the masks that says show the overlay. And then that thing stays on all the time, whether or not you're hovering. If you've checked show overlay, then there's a little button there that you can tap. Show the mask overlay color. I'm going to click it. By default, it's set to white. I don't care for that because often I have white in my image that I don't want to confuse for my mask. So I've chosen, and I usually choose, one of two crazy colors. Fluorescent green, unless I have a lot of foliage, plant life in my image, at which point I might change this to hot pink. All right, that's how you can set up and change your overlay color. If it's checked, you get it all the time. I don't prefer that, but that is the default. So instead, I'm hovering, and when I hover, I'm seeing that area where I did my radial, right? That's it. I could click it, the words. I'm now back and editing it. I think it had a rather silly name, so I'm going to double click on Mask 7 and call it Vignette. Spelled properly. There it is. Now I know what I got there. Okay? All right. Now, let me hit the J tool again and create one just to show you that this time, harshly, I've set my slider to very, very dark. I told you you could hit the X before you use the tool or after. X. 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 It's a toggle. What is it doing? It's applying my slider either to the outside in this case or X, the inside. But it's whatever that slider is or group of sliders are set to do. You can do it before or after. Why can't I see my tool? V, overlay. How do I move it? Drag it, right? How do I rotate it? Which doesn't matter if it's a perfect circle. But look, I can grab one of these round dots that touch the actual circle itself, and I can compress or expand to create an oval. And then you'll see, and this part will make sense finally, that the little rotate knob, which is on a little stick, you can rotate it for the shape or the angle of your subject if you choose to do that. I'm explaining what all those little handles mean, do, and how you might use them. She looks a little dark to me. I'm going to hit X. I flipped it. And now it matches the oval of her face, at which point I decide, what was I thinking? And I can go back at any moment in time and re-edit that area. All right, that's the radial tool. I'm going to call a timeout right now and fade out as I set up a demo for the next killer tool. The next killer tool I'm going to say is the crop tool. Now, by the way, if you're looking online for killer tools, you're not going to find it. That's just what I'm calling the tools I can't live without. Right? Like in the early days with the killer app. But here I am looking at the next one, the crop tool. I'm going to hit the letter C on my keyboard. Hey, there's a shortcut that makes sense. C for crop. Now, the cropping tool allows me to crop my image, recompose it truly to what I want, cut off areas I don't want to see, anything that may be distracting in the corners or on the edges, if I can get away with it. But it also allows me to correct a very common amateur mistake, and that is crooked horizons. There's almost no better way to look like an amateur than to have your horizons slightly crooked. Now, if they're way crooked, it looks like you meant to do it. But if they're slightly crooked, as this one is, I'm in trouble. And so I'm going to grab my cropping tool. Now, you know, I could crop with this tool, no problem. But what I'm going to show you is the crop while straightening my horizon. Instead of grabbing a corner to crop, go outside of a corner or an edge, and you'll notice that your cursor bends. It's bent. And that's telling you it's time to rotate should you want to do so. I'm going to go ahead and rotate. And when I rotate, you're seeing that my crop is going to crop. But look at my horizon, and it's also rotating the image. It will be straightening my horizon. That looks pretty straight if this line is a guide. How cool is that? So I've got this, it's called a crop overlay. It's showing me an overlay, and I can use those horizontal, perfectly horizontal and perfectly vertical guides as a guide, in fact, for straightening my image. Now, if I hit enter or return on my keyboard, then the deal is done. It's sealed. I just straightened my horizon. Now, it also cropped in on my image. When I did that, you're going to see the before and the after. You can see the edges there. My image is slightly cocked, but look, I lost some of the bricks over here. And it looks like I lost more of the bottom left than I lost of the bottom right. And it looks like right here I lost almost nothing, but near the top I lost, something. Yeah, just know that when you do the rotation, it's only got so much image to work with, and so you may see it do something like that while you're rotating. If I were to crop there, I would lose a lot of my image. So it's a compromise. It's a compromise. All right, I'm going to delete. I have the crop tool selected. Delete, and it undoes. It takes me back to before I made any change. Now you have another way, and it's related to the crop tool. In fact, when you click in the real camera raw and you see the crop tool, it comes not just with this cropping capability, but it also comes with a level. There's a level in here. That's what that little icon represents. You've got a level. And that level, you'd think, might have a keyboard shortcut L, but it doesn't. Its keyboard shortcut is A, because they call that tool the alignment tool, but it looks like a level. Now, I just hovered, and something popped up called Tooltips, which teaches me about the tool I'm hovering over, including the keyboard shortcut. Hey, but it says, wait, it went away because it only lasts 3 seconds. Double click to straighten automatically? Dude, I'm going to do it. Double click. It figures it out. Wait, what? artificial intelligence built into Adobe Camera Raw deduces what my horizon straightness ought to be. It figures out what my horizon is, and it auto-corrects. I'm done. Enter or return. You can hit A for the straighten tool. It took me into the crop tool when I did that. And then just double click the tool to straighten, enter, and I'm done. Now you can also use the straighten tool manually. I want to teach you something cool about it when I use it manually. I can click and drag to make that horizon straight. I might choose to do something a little chaotic and say maybe the top of the wall should be straight. I'm going to change what the artificial intelligence would have chosen. I'm dragging along the top of the wall. If I chose to make it straight, well, now the Grand Canyon is cockeyed, so not a good choice. But you could also use that straighten tool vertically, and boy, is that worth knowing. I use it vertically for my subjects, for flagpoles, for cacti, saguaro cacti that are nice and vertical, for walls, for edges. So if you grab the straighten tool and click from the top center of my subject's head right down between his calves and his feet, then it straightens an object vertically. Your choice. Your choice. Let me show you another. Obviously, I'm in a kayak, that's my son, and boy, was it hard to get a really straight photo with a straight horizon. Even though my camera has one of those cool little bubble levels, right, good luck to you. So here we go. I could either drag my cropping tool following that guide, you see it, right? Or double click the straighten tool. Wow, what a great job that did. And then I could continue to crop. I'm cropping after it's straightened. And I could even move my image within the crop to try to get that paddle to show up. I now have a new composition. Enter or return. I'll take it. Another. Crop. Double click the straighten tool. No change. I got lucky. Sometimes it happens, but it's about 5% of the time. New image. Get rid of the crop. It's obviously crooked. I'm going to get my level tool, double click it. Let's see what it does. Oh, it doesn't always work. And so that's when using the straighten tool manually might do a better job for you. I'm going to click and drag it. This slight beach, sloping beach is confusing my straighten tool. So I'm going to do it manually there. Little cock, it worked. But for some reason, some of this image represented by the checkerboard is now showing. So I'm going to crop in. No big deal. Crop in on the bottom. Still not a big deal. Hey, I noticed that when I cropped on the top, it cropped on all sides. Here's why. Look over in the crop panel. I've introduced you to the straighten tool, but there's also an aspect ratio. Whatever the original image's ratio was, aspect ratio is what it's called. It's width to height ratio. It's currently locked to the original. And what you could do is say, well, I'm going to print a 5x7. Look at that. Look at that list. You'll recognize some common ratios, if not common print sizes, in inches, for example, 4 by 5, 8 by 10, 8.5 by 11. So if I was going to print a 5 by 7, I could ask it to lock me into a 5 by 7. I'm locked into a 5 by 7. Well, that's not going to be the best 5 by 7, so I'm going to drag my image. Return or enter. That would be a better 5 by 7. Okay, back to the cropping tool. There are times when you do not want to lock your aspect ratio. So I'm going to sneak over and unlock. I'm going to hover. I got the tooltips and it said Option A on the Mac. 3 seconds was up. Let's read it again, move off, come back on. But Alt A is what you PC users will see. Oh, so I can either click the lock to unlock it. It's a pick the lock by a little click. That's not very secure. But I'm going to hit Option A, and now it's unlocked, and that will allow me to do any custom crop I choose. Ah, there's a little dark shape over here in the corner. I wonder if that was my shadow. So I'm going to custom crop in. I really don't think this is a perfect 5 by 7 any longer, but it allows me to crop in any way I want, and I prefer to do that maybe for a website, maybe Instagram, something like that. Now Instagram have some specific values, and I can show you that too. I can sneak over to the aspect ratio, and while I have some other non-print ratios, 4 by 3, 16 by 9, 16 by 10, those are video crop ratios. But I could sneak down to custom. And let's just say I went to Instagram and I looked up what is the prime resolution for? What's the appropriate resolution for Instagram? Maybe it tells me it's 1350 by 1080. Maybe it tells me that. I know I'm typing in the ratio, but I'm just using the actual pixels it told me. Of course that's the ratio, because the pixels are in that ratio. So when I say okay, that would be a perfect Instagram crop. And that is 13 by 50, whether or not I drag. So this is me saying, well, for Instagram, I'd really rather it look like that. C, crop tool, or change my mind. Who needs the buildings? Let's make it look like this guy's on the beach. That's better. That was C, crop, aspect ratio, custom if you need it, lock or unlock, straighten, flip, rotate or flip. Often an image might need to be reflected or flipped. No one's going to know but you. Here I am on the West Coast. Well, it was the East Coast pointing north. Whatever. You can flip the image. All of that control is inside the crop. It's inside the crop tool, which, as you already know, doesn't exist in the fake Camera Raw filter. But here we are with full power in Adobe Camera Raw, the real deal. Time out. Let that soak in. Whew. Good. Slight diversion. The crop overlays. You might want to turn the page on your notes. The crop overlays. This overlay is a guide. It's a composition guide. For those of us who didn't go to, let's say, graphic design school or high-end photography composition training, these are helpers. And they're trying to let me know that there is a classical composition guide I could use. And the magical points on this particular classical composition guide are these crisscross areas, where 2 verticals crisscross 2 horizontals. Those 1, 2, 3, 4, you've counted them, possibilities are the strongest emphasis for the human eye, and so this guide is trying to help me, right? So I might say load up, this is the strategy. Maybe I could use that to line up my key subject, my hero, right on one of those points. Enter. So I have an aspect ratio, for Instagram in this case, and C shows me crop, shows me the guide that I could use. Now this is not the real rule of, well, I shouldn't say, this is not the rule of thirds. You can see as you examine that this guide isn't divided into equal thirds, horizontally or vertically. It's not, because the real classical composition rule is not equal thirds. Rather, it's called the golden mean, or the golden rectangle, or the divine ratio. These are its classical names as it has existed through multiple generations of artists, including the great masters. This is the real golden mean, golden rectangle. Now, if I hit V, we learned earlier on the radial tool, V, and on all the other killer tools, it hides the overlay. It hides the overlay. V will hide the overlay if you don't want it. I want it. I'm turning it on. That's V. Overlay on or off. Overlay on or off. Check it out. Shift V. Nothing. Option V. Oh. Option V. Changing my overlay. Option V is changing my well, that's fascinating. This completely different classical overlay has this gentleman at the same crisscross. Nearly. Bada boom. There. It's another option for me. That was shift. No, I'm sorry. That was option V. I'm getting ahead of myself. Option V, option V, option V will rotate or change your crop overlay. Here we go. Shift V. Shift V. If there are alternates for that overlay, Shift V will show you the alternates, which may affect you if your subject is on one side or the other. Shift V. Now, I'm going to hit Option V or Alt V and get one oddity called the golden spiral. You've seen lots of videos probably, or websites discussing the pros and the cons, the truth or the falsity of a classical composition style called the spiral, the Fibonacci spiral. Well, if I were to try out the Fibonacci spiral, what it plays, the game it plays, is your subject ought to fall within that spiral zone. It's another opportunity. It's an option for you to try and decide what you like, what you care for. I'm going to go back in, and yet, instead of Option V, I'm going to do Shift V, and you'll notice that this oddity, this spiral, has the most orientations. Here I go. Shift V. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice I'm in the bottom left. 5, 6. I'm still in the bottom left, but it's different. It's wider than the last one was. 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different orientations. and then it goes right back around the horn. That's interesting and exciting, and there you go. All right, oh, hang on. What's going on here? On a 2-button mouse, I right-clicked. You Mac users who are only single-button handicapped can hold the Control key to get here. Not a right-click, rather it's a Control key click, not Command, Control, and you'll see the aspect ratio quickies. You'll see I'm showing the overlay shortcut V. You'll see X, where we can invert the aspect ratio like we inverted the radial fill earlier. I can lock it, constrain it to the image. I can change my overlay's opacity if I don't want to see too harsh a white line as my guide. But this is where I want to take you. Which overlay style are you looking at? The grid, the thirds, which is the shortcut, right? The thirds, it's easy to memorize, easier to contemplate approximate thirds, isn't it? Than to use the actual golden ratio, divine ratio, golden mean. All of that is the same. So you can rotate through each of these if you don't know the keyboard shortcut, which I showed you, to cycle. That was Option V. Or the orientation, Shift V. PC users, that was Alt V, Shift V. But here's where I want you to go. Let me come out to reaffirm. I'm Control clicking on the Mac. I'm right button clicking. Follow me here. Overlay style. This is so buried. What a buried option. Choose overlays to cycle. Which overlay styles do I want to cycle through? Release on that, and you'll find that all of them are already checked except the spiral. Why? I dig it. And so, this is the only place I know to go find that sucker. Turn it on. Why wouldn't you want to rotate or cycle through all of them? All right? Crop. Crop tool, overlays, the power of the crop tool. Gosh, all of that in total makes the crop tool, to me, a killer tool. When I do this one, you're going to think something's a little shifty. I'm a little shifty. In fact, I'm looking at this image and it already looks a little shifty to me. Something's goofy. Did I just say shifty 3 times? Because that's the shortcut for my next killer tool, Shift T. Shift T. Let's do it. Shift T. And when I hit Shift T, I'm in one of my favorite tools. It's relatively young in the world of Adobe Camera Raw. It's in Lightroom, of course, because it uses the same engine. It's in the raw tools if you're using Photoshop, of course, because it's all the same engine. But this is a tool that's not available in the real Photoshop. It's not in regular Photoshop. And I adore it. And it's earned me quite a lot of extra work because I'm aware of it. This tool is extremely handy for a couple of events. Shift T. Let me tell you what it does. Shift T straightens in 2 directions. The crop tool straightens something, the horizon, or my subject, but not both. The straighten tool straightens something, but not 2 somethings. Shift T is a double straightener. In fact, it's a double straightener, a triple straightener, or a quadruple straightener. You can use it to straighten up to, but no more than, 4 edges. It also doesn't work with a single edge, like the straighten tool would do. No, it requires at least 2. And what it's good for is taking perspective out of photos that you shoot when you shoot up or when you shoot down. You've seen these. Your buildings have an odd Now, you could solve that expensively by buying yourself a nice tilt-shift version of your favorite lens. How about we use Shifty instead? I'm going to be that shifty and save myself some money. I'm in Shifty, and it brings up Shift-T. It brings up something under a panel called geometry. Now that was, if I want to take a long cut, right? Command 1, Command 2, Command 3, Command 4, Command 5, Command 6, Command 7, and I'm in the geometry. Gosh, but I want more than just the geometry panel. I want a very particular, oops, I'm clicking icons and something's automatically happening to me. Here's the one I want. It looks like a little bit of a tic-tac-toe board coming apart at the seams. Its official name, Shift-T, takes me straight to this tool, this icon. Shift-T's official name is the upright guided. Upright guided. Draw 2 or more guides, I've told you up to 4, in order to correct perspective. It's great for architecture. It's great for slightly skewed images. It's really great for artwork. When you take a photo of a painting and it's always just got a little bit of a perspective to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's fixed, it's perfection. Let's do it. Stop talking about it. I'm in Shifty. I am Shifty. And I want to straighten this top edge. It's crooked. That's 1, but nothing happens. Of course not. Here, I could do the bottom of that window, but I'm going to do the bottom of the carpet here. That ought to be straight. Now, I don't have to go all the way across. I'll just show what I can see, what I know. Well, that should have been straight. That's the second. Look what happens. Bang, it works. Here's a third. This side of the door. Another adjustment. And over here, this corner. And there's a final adjustment. 1, 2, 3, 4. This image is perfectly squared. I couldn't use a T-square or a level on all these edges to get a more perfect image. Now, I've got some issues in the top and the bottom, so I'm going to hit my crop tool now and see that I can solve that by just cropping in on those areas. Now, it's still constraining me, isn't it? It's locked in the cropping tool. I get all that. But I'm going to get as much of my image as I can here. Perfect. Looks good to me. I'm checking out my edges. Enter. I've straightened it. That was Shifty of me. And I've recropped it for architecture. Let's look at another example. I've already done it to this image. How do I know? Because when I went Shift-T, I saw 2 guides. Look down in that area where Shifty shows up, and you can clear the guides, wipe them out. And you can see that, yeah, I had a problem. I'm here in Shifty. I could set my horizon straight, but I also want to take out the perspective of this building. And I'll grab any line I think ought to have gone straight up and down. Bang. That was easy. Next image. Oh, earlier I opened this image and I said, wow, I just got lucky. Did I? Let's clear our guides. Clear. Guess I didn't get so lucky. I didn't use the straighten tool for my horizon. I used Shifty. Shifty. My horizon ought to be about, and I'm averaging because these are mountains. It ought to be about that. Good guess. But my tower's center, I shot with a wide angle lens, so anything outside of the middle starts to bend outward. And so I'm going to click and drag straight down the middle of that tower as best as I can. Both straighten. I move on. So I use Shift E when at least two edges need to be straightened. It eliminates that amateur catch of a horizon or a skewed image slightly, which drives architects crazy. Interior designers hate that. Photographers, however, hate a crooked horizon. I use Shift E to do more than one thing. Now, let's look at this. I'm going to draw, I could pick anything. I could draw down that straight line, but I know there's a top of a bridge here that ought to have been horizontal. The bridge engineer built it that way. There's one. And I'm going to take a wild stab that these center posts, these center cables, also would have been straight. Bang. My image is straightity straight. I don't know if I'm allowed legally to invent these terms. There it is. I hit done. You saw me edit 4 images at the same time. When I hit done, it updates all 4. That's the end of this bonus video. Some more killer tools. Crop with its overlays and so on, and Shift T, the upright guided tool. Can't live without them.